In this video, I'm going to be showing you how you can automate payroll in your agency. Now, just to give you an idea, we're going to be building out these two automations right here that run at the end of each month. The first automation here sums everyone's monthly salaries up and then sends a message in Slack, looks something like this, to the relevant admin with everyone's monthly salaries and the number of hours they work. Then the admin can just press this button and it will take them to this Google Sheet where then they can individually approve different salaries or edit it if necessary. Then this automation right here will run, and this automation will automatically look at the approved salaries in this sheet right here and then automatically send them through Wise directly to the employee completely automatically. I'll be showing you how to build these two custom automations completely from scratch so you can steal this exact automated payroll system in your agency to automatically pay your employees. Now for context, my name is Leo. I'm the CEO and founder of Fluxomate. We run an operation agency that helps leading seven-figure agencies improve their backend systems using automations just like the one I'm about to show you in this video. Best believe we don't hold anything back, so let's get straight into it. So in order to actually build this automation, we're going to need three different things. We're going to use Mate.com to actually create the different automations here from scratch. We're going to be building out this Google Sheet in Google Sheet so we can actually track how much money we're actually paying to our employees. And then we're going to use Wise to actually send these payments to our employees wherever they are in the world. The first thing we actually need to do is build this Google Sheet. This Google Sheet is made up of three different sheets. We have the weekly log sheet, which basically just logs how much each employee is working every single week, along with their hourly rate, so we can track how much we have to pay them for the week. We have the monthly recap sheet, which basically sums up the weekly logs and groups them by month and the specific employee, so we know how much each employee needs to get paid at the end of the month. And then we have an employees sheet, so we can track those individual employees with the relevant ID, which is going to become very, very handy later. Remember this down the line. Now for context, this is actually the second video in a two-part series showing you how you can automate payroll in your agency. In the first video, we built a time tracking system within NoLoco. This allowed employees to seamlessly track the amount of time they were working on different projects. And in an ideal world, you would use time tracking and link it with the video I'm about to show you today. But don't worry if you haven't seen that video, you can come back to it at the end. For now, let me show you how you can use even something as simple as a Google Sheet that looks just like this to automate your payroll. So I've just gone ahead and created a Google Sheet. I'm going to call this my Payroll Sheet 2.0. And like I said, guys, we're going to be building everything from scratch. So the first thing we need is a weekly log sheet. Now, the whole purpose of this sheet is basically so you can track how much each employee is working on a weekly basis. Obviously, we could automate this as well, but just for the purpose of keeping everything simple in this video, I'm also focusing on actual automation. We're just going to assume that every week an employee or an admin fills this in manually for each person. Once again, this is something that's so easy to automate, but just for simplicity, let's just say the data is already there. We're just focusing on the actual paying of the payrolls, which is the most complicated part. All we're doing in the weekly log sheet is tracking a couple of things. We're tracking the employee name, the email of the actual employee, the hourly rate, so how much they're getting paid an hour, the week starting, which is basically the date that starts the actual week off, the number of hours they worked in that specific week, and the total pay, which we're going to automatically calculate. So I'm just going to import some example data here. This is probably the same data that you saw me use back in the day. For context on how I got this data, I literally just generated it using ChatGPT. All you have to do is ask it to generate data and give it a relevant heading, so they can go ahead and do that for you. So as you can see, we have the employee name, we have the email, we have the hourly rate, we have the week starting. So once again, these are all the different weeks that these different employees are working on and the number of hours they actually worked. Now, we want to calculate total pay. All we have to do is press the equal sign here. And then all we're going to do is select E, which is our number of hours they worked. And all we're going to do is times that by the hourly rate. Fairly simple, guys. That's going to basically calculate the weekly pay for each employee on the individual week. All we're going to do is drag this all the way to the bottom, so it will automatically apply to all the different formulas. And now, just like that, we can see how much each employee is owed on a weekly basis. This, once again, is our weekly log sheet, and this is what we're going to be using to actually track how much time the employees are working on a weekly basis. Because this is how we're going to sum up and figure out how much they work on a monthly basis. For each employee, we're basically going to sum up the number of pay that they actually have based on the actual month and then go from there. So that's the weekly sheet out of the way. Let's go ahead and add a new sheet, and this right here is going to be our monthly sheet. Now, there's a couple of important things we actually need to track here. As you can see, I've automatically brought my headers in just to save me some time, so you have to watch me kind of type everything through. But the number of columns we have is fairly simple. We have the employee name, similar to last time. We have the email, once again, similar to last time. We have the hourly rate, the month, which is the month they're actually working in, the monthly hours they worked, which we're going to use a formula to automatically gather that from here. The monthly total pay, which once again, we're going to use a formula to automatically gather that from here. And then very importantly, this is going to be where we're going to be tracking whether that pay is approved, whether we send the pay, the date we actually sent it when we use the automation, and the transaction ID so we can always reference it in the future. Very simple. In order to actually build this, all I'm using is a query formula, and I'm just going to enter this in A2, and you can just go ahead and actually copy this from me, guys. All we're basically doing here is basically compiling data in a weekly log sheet and adding it to the relevant databases. Now, this basically sorts it out in a chronological order, and as you can see, if I go ahead and enter this, all my data will automatically be here, and then for each employee, for each individual month, it sums up the number of hours they worked and the total pay, which is basically the amount that we actually owe them. Fairly simple, guys. I mean, once again, I just generated this formula right here using ChatGPT. It's nothing too complicated, but this is very important because this is the sheet that we use in these different automations to do different things like send that Slack message to the admin, and most importantly, I guess, actually sending those payments through Wise. So once you've actually set up a Google Sheet, there's a couple more things I want to do just to make sure the formatting is right and to make sure that it's actually functional. The first thing I'm going to be doing is adding a column right here, and this is when we'll be adding the different options to approve or to mark these different transactions as sent. So I'm going to select this field right here, go to insert, and then if I go over to tick box, you can see I've got these boxes now that I can easily just approve different transactions. Fairly simple. Once again, nothing too complicated. The only thing I want to do in this sheet for now is add different kind of conditional formatting just to look a bit nicer. So for that, I'm going to go over to format. I'm going to go down to conditional formatting, and now I'm going to basically be applying different options, I guess, if you want to call it that. So I'm going to select the range, which in this case will just be this entire sheet, just from here to there, and I can move this over to infinity. And then I'm going to be setting up a couple of formulas. I mean, once again, this is nothing crazy, guys. It's just to make it look a bit nicer, a bit more functional. The first one I'm going to be adding is a green if the money has actually been sent. So fairly simple. And once again, I've got my range here, and I'm going to go to formula, go to custom formula, and then I'm going to be adding is equal to $I3, which is where we're actually tracking these individual sheets, and then equal to true because it's just a checkbox. So now as you can see, nothing's happening. Let me change this to green. However, if I go ahead and, for example, tick these boxes, you'll see the entire row will turn to green. Now, for some reason, both of it's green. So let me change this to white so we can still see it just like that. So fairly simple. This just basically allows us to track which payments are sent. Let's add another rule, and this time it's going to be the same field. However, we're going to make it so that if it's not approved and if it's not sent, it's going to go ahead and make it red to make it very clear to the admin who she actually needs to approve. So in this case, we have the same kind of range. And then for the formula is going to be something like this. So if H3 is false and H3 is not empty, then we're going to add it as red. But if I3 is true, then we're going to override it with green. So let's go ahead and actually quickly change this. We're going to make this red again so we can actually see. And now you can get an idea, right? All those different ones that are not being ticked off as sent are red. However, if I quickly were to tick this off, then fairly simple. I go ahead and add it. And once again, if I go ahead and mark as approved, that goes ahead and change this to white. One thing I want to add, very, very simple. Once again, I want to make sure to add some sort of kind of pending one. So if it's approved but it's not been sent, I want to make it yellow. So once again, I'm in conditional formatting. And this time the formula is going to be very simple. It's just if H3 is equal to true, I'm going to make it yellow. Just like that. So that's how Google Sheet basically set up, at least for the monthly sheet. I basically set up different colors just to make it very, very clear. So when an admin comes here, for example, if I quickly tick some of these off, they can easily see, okay, these are all the transactions I need to approve. And then when they actually approve it, they can easily see which ones are pending. And then when it's actually sent, they can see which one's actually been sent. So fairly simple, guys, nothing too complicated. The only sheet I want to add in now is the employee sheet. And this is basically where we're tracking the different employees that we're going to be using in the automation to actually pay them. So I'm going to name this employees. And then I need 3 different columns here. I need, once again, the name, the email, and the ID. And to be honest, I could improve the sheet. I could add a bit more here, but for now, I'm just going to leave it. And then I'm going to be entering the information. Now, this ID right here is very important because this is what we're using in the automation to actually automatically send them money. And where I actually got this from is through Wise. Now, in this case, I'm using a sandbox account, so it's not exactly real. When you're actually testing this yourself, I would recommend doing it first on sandbox and then moving on to a live account just to make sure you don't actually spend any money. So within my sandbox account, if I open up this one, for example, and this is just fake, I mean, I wish I had 3 million right now. But if I go to recipients, you can see I've already added each of my individual employees as a recipient. And if I go ahead and click on that, you can see all the different information, which obviously this is just fake at the moment. However, I've had to manually add them so I can actually get that receipt. In order to actually get it, it's fairly simple. And this is kind of where we start talking about automation. Let's say you go ahead and actually add someone first, and you can actually do this for an email link if you want to make it super easy. But let's say for now, I want to add someone and their currencies are USD. I go to someone else and then I add in the information. Once again, the email, full name, the routing number, and you can collect this in your employee onboarding. Once you actually add them, you want to use this API call right here within Make. I'm just going to move this here for now. And all you're basically doing is getting all the different accounts that you actually have using your authorization, which once again, I'll show you how to get later on. And then from that, you basically get the employee ID. So guys, don't get too overwhelmed by that. I promise I will go over everything again later on to show you exactly how you can do this, but I will just give you a sneak peek. So we basically have our Google Sheet set up now. I mean, there's not much more we can add to this. And once again, just to give you guys an idea, if I start copying this data in and I change some of these dates to, I don't know, April instead, we should see the monthly sheet automatically update because everything here is dynamic. So you wouldn't have to do anything manually, hopefully, in terms of actually updating the sheet and make sure everything's tracked. So as you can see here, the monthly sheet has automatically been updated with the basically April in this case. However, we don't really care about this right now because we're more so focused on March. So let's go and actually unsend some of these. So we can just make sure, and then for now, we'll just make sure that we'll pretend April is paid before March. It doesn't make sense, but this is the data we're actually be using. So guys, that gives you an idea of how the Google Sheet is set up. Now let's go and actually create our first automation. Now what the first automation is going to do is fairly simple. It's basically going to be scraping this sheet right here. More importantly, it's going to be scraping it for the monthly values, and then it's going to be sending a message in Slack to an admin with a summary of all those values. So let's go ahead and actually build this out. Within make.com, I'm going ahead and create an account, and we're going to go ahead and create a new scenario. And you could probably get away with doing this on a free account, guys. If it's your first time using make.com, don't stress too much. Once again, I'm going to be giving you a guide for everything. And by the way, guys, if you do want any of the resources completely for free, all you have to do is check out the first thing in the description, join my free community, navigate over to the classroom, and if you go to YouTube resources, which is the second module in the classroom, you can find all my different templates, and it's literally just as simple as clicking on this, for example, download the JSON file and importing it straight to make.com. But regardless, I still recommend you go through the entire video so you can see me building this live and you get an idea of how to actually do this. So this is going to be our first automation, which is going to be our payroll summary. #1. The first module is, once again, we're going to search Google Sheets. I'm going to go over to Google Sheets. I'm going to scroll down until I see search rows. And here I'm going to have to go ahead and connect to my account. If you haven't done this already, all you have to do is press add, sign in with Google, and that's pretty much it. It's very, very simple. Once you've actually gone ahead and collected your Google Sheets account, and make sure it's the same account that your Google Sheet is actually belongs to, all you want to do is open this up, open the spreadsheet ID, and in this case, you want to change the search method to select from all, and then you can put ID finder, and here you just want to enter the name of your actual Google Sheet, which in this case is my payroll sheet. So if I go ahead and press search, it should automatically find it for me. If not, it gives you a couple of different options, and in this case I want this one. And now you can see it's going to map the different fields. So in this case, the sheet we're actually forming or looking for is the monthly sheet, because that's the one we really care about. And if you open this up, the only real thing we care about is the filter, because you don't want this to trigger for every single one of the monthly payments. We only want this to trigger for the payments that are due this month. So I'm going to go with the filter, I'm going to go with the month, and then for the text operator, I'm going to make sure it's equal to the date. Now, if you have a quick look at how the data is actually formatted within the sheet, it's year and then the month. So I'm going to make sure we do the same thing here. In order to do that, I'm going to go open this, open up the actual formatter, and I'll zoom in for you guys so you can see this a bit better. And within the formatter, I'm going to go over to format date. I'm going to put in today's date. And then for the actual output I want, if you go once again to Google Sheet, we can see it's year, and then month. So to do that, I'm going to go over here and then choose year, uppercase, year, and then month. And now that should basically match it. Fairly simple, guys. Once again, nothing extraordinary, but if you go ahead and scrape this now, we should get 5 different bundles for today's month. So as you can see, we have Emily, and then we can see it's the matching month, and we should already have 5 bundles, which we do. So far so good. All we've done here is basically scrape that sheet. Nothing complicated. Now, this is where it gets slightly more complicated. Once again, don't worry too much. All we're basically doing here is using array aggregator and then putting it back through an iterator so we can actually send it through the Slack block kit builder. The reason we're sending it through the Slack block kit builder is so we can add different things like this button and nice text just to make it look a bit nicer. So the first thing we're going to choose is an array aggregator, and we're just going to select all the custom fields, and we're just going to leave it as that. Once it passes through the array aggregator, we want to iterate it again. So I'm going to go over the flow control, iterator, and then for the array in this case, it's going to be this one. I'm just going to click on that, and that's pretty simple. Now, the last thing I want to do in the actual iterator is go over to my tools and then scroll all the way down until I see the text aggregator. So here I'm going to choose my source module, as the iterator, and this is where I'm going to be entering my text. Now, this is going to look slightly complicated, but once again, guys, I don't want you to worry because I'll be guiding you through everything. All we're basically doing here is making it dynamic in a sense that we can automatically add this to Slack block kit builder. Now, if you don't know what Slack block kit builder is, I can actually show you guys. This is what actually allows us to send nicer messages or more formatted messages, as to say, within Slack. So within it, for example, there are a ton of different templates we can copy, but as you can see, we can add different things like images, and this is how it's basically used. I don't know exactly what this is. I assume it's some sort of maybe JavaScript. Honestly, I have no clue, to be honest, but this is basically how we're doing it. And this is why we're using a text aggregator in this specific format, so we can get that individual kind of row for the employee name to output something like this. So all I'm going to do here is add the individual fields. So first we have the employee name, which we can get just here. Then we have the hourly rate, which once again, we can just hit in the hourly rate. And then we have the number of hours they worked and the total pay for the month, which once again is right here. So fairly simple. The only thing I want to do here is turn on the advanced settings. If I go to row separator, I'm going to make it a new row. And honestly, that's pretty much it, guys. Very, very simple. So the last step I actually want to do here is send all this over to Slack as a message. So very simple. I'm going to add another module. I'm going to choose Slack. I'm going to scroll down to create a message. And this is where you want to add your Slack connection. Once again, it literally is as simple as just pressing add, choose a connection type, go with bot is always better than user, press save, and then a pop-up will appear for you to log in through Slack. And they make it very, very easy to do this, guys. This is nothing complicated. Once you're actually logged in through Slack, you want to choose a specific channel you're going to be sending to. In my case, it's going to be a sending channel. So I'm going to go select from list. I'm going to go public channel, and I'm just going to go ahead and choose my testing channel. Now, this is where it gets interesting because we want to enter our actual blocks, which is that code, which once again, I'm not exactly sure what it is. Very simple though, you can just copy and paste this from me. I'm going to be entering my blocks, which all it does is sends the monthly summary. And all I've done here is basically format it so it says the actual month in writing and then the year, just to make it super clear what month it is. And then here, this is where I enter my text aggregator, which you found before. And if we scroll down, it's just basically the discrepancies. And the last thing I added here is a button. Now this is very cool because this allows us to easily press that button and go straight to Google Sheet. But what I have to do here is actually update the link because that's an older link. So if I go over here, all I have to do is change the actual URL, press save. And this is pretty much it. We should be able to test it now. We should get a Slack message. Let's go ahead and test it live with you guys. And if there's any errors, I'll also go ahead and fix it live. So everything looks to be working great. If I open our Slack, you can see I just got a new message now with the monthly payroll summary for everyone, March 2023. It breaks down the employee name, the hourly rate, total hours they work, total monthly pay for every single person. And then we have this nice little button right here, which if I press, should take me automatically to the relevant sheet. Just like that, guys. Very, very cool. Now, the whole purpose of that button or that whole message in general is for an admin to come in and easily check if she spots any red flags. In an ideal world, there wouldn't be any. However, let's say it does, she can easily go over here, find the employee there's a red flag for, maybe update the weekly log, so on and so forth. But the main thing we want the admin to actually do is approve the different payrolls, because this is going to be very important in our next automation. When you're dealing with any sort of automation that handle payments automatically, we want to have some sort of human touch. Don't get me wrong, we could easily automate this and just have it send payments without any flaws, but that's not really helpful because let's say there's any error, you don't want to accidentally pay someone more than you should or even less. These are employees at the end of the day. So all we're doing here is basically adding a step for a human to come in and basically manually approve these, which once again makes a lot of sense. Now, one thing I actually forgot to add to the sheet is the actual employee ID. We want to basically have a formula that looks up the employee name or their email and then outputs the relevant employee ID. So I think I should already have a formula for this so I can show you guys. And once again, guys, this is nothing complicated. I mean, I literally generated these formulas using ChatGPT and a bit of Google Sheets knowledge, but this is my formula. It basically looks up B1, which is the employee name, and matches it with the employee name in this specific sheet here. And then it basically outputs the actual ID. So if you go ahead and run this, let's see if it adds in. Nothing yet. Let's just try to do this and see if it works. So that's a bit blocky. It seems to be adding it together. Let's go ahead and make this an individual one and then copy this formula, add it in here. That seems to have worked. Then we can just obviously cross-reference this. This Emily Davis, 7018, and we check this here, Emily Davis, 7018. Perfect. So that works perfectly. And this is once again very important because this is what we're using in the second automation to actually find those individual kind of IDs. So let's change this to black so we can actually see that, and perfect. Cool. So let's say as an admin, I come in and I approve everyone's. Now that basically means we're ready to move on to the second automation, which will be automatically sending these different payments to the person. Now, once again, I did say to you guys, I'm using a sandbox account for this because I don't want to first obviously disclose my private API keys for my Wise account. And secondly, I want to make it easy that you guys can do this without having a business account and whatnot. But if you actually want to use it properly, you do need a Wise business account. It's quite cool. I mean, most people use it to send salary anyways, which is kind of why this video is on Wise, but they have a really good API, which even though we had to obviously create our own custom solution, it works quite well. But once again, guys, one thing that's important here is you want to have the different employee IDs, right? And how you actually get that is fairly simple. If you go over to a new scenario, and for now, we'll go ahead and save this because this is pretty much done. But oh, actually, guys, before we actually move on from this, one more thing I want to show you, which is quite important, is the trigger. When do we actually want to run this? So in this case, in my idea, the way this automation will work is that I would run at the end of each month. So all I'm going to do here is go to all days of the month. I can choose the 28th because that's the only day that's kind of going to summarize the information. To be honest, now that I'm even looking at it, realistically, the best thing to do would be put it as 1 and then update this specific one, not yet, to rather than only match it for today's month, we can put, rather than now, we can change this to date, add months, and then we go here and add now, and then -1. So basically minus a month. So basically this triggers at the end of each month so you can actually compile the information. That's how I would do it, and that's how you should do it. But just for the purpose of this video, going forward, I'm going to go ahead and leave it as the monthly so you can actually have that data in. But basically, what we basically done here is set up the trigger when this automation is actually going to run. So at the start of each month, this automation will run and scrape the data from the previous month. For example, if I show you guys now, you're not going to see March's data. Now you're actually going to see February's data. So if you scroll down, you can see the dates look a bit different. And if you cross-reference this, again, for example, Jane Doe, we see the second, she's total monthly pay was 3,525. As you can see, now it's February's date, which the numbers are completely different because rather than March, it's doing February. But once again, in this automation, I'm going to be focused on this month just to make it a bit simpler. So let's move over to the second automation. I'm going to save these changes. And all I'm going to do here is create a new scenarios. And the main thing I want to show you how to do, guys, here is basically find those individual employee IDs within Wise, because it's not that simple. It's not as easy as just going here, for example, just finding it within a different recipients, because for some reason it's not there, which is quite annoying. But don't worry, I'm going to show you how to find it, and it's also not in the URL before you ask. So I'm going to go over to HTTP, and this is, I won't lie, where it starts getting a bit more complicated because we're using different things like, you know, custom API calls. But once again, guys, I don't want you to worry because I'm going to be guiding you through the whole thing from start to finish. So I'm going to scroll all the way down to make a request, and this is how actually we're going to call the API. And in this case, this is a specific API we're going to call. And all this is going to do is it's basically going to get all the different accounts that I actually have within my specific authorization or my account, basically. So what I want to do here is firstly add a header, and the only header I need to add here is my authorization, which is basically my token. Now, once again, I'm happy to share this to you guys because it's a sandbox account, but if you want to get it for your account, all you need to go is over here, click on your Wise account, and if you go over to integration and tools and you go to API tokens, all you have to do is just add a new token. Very simple. Name it and then make it full access, and that's pretty much it. In this case, I already have my token, which is this bad boy right here. Feel free to use it if you want. So that's pretty much all you need to do here. This is probably the simplest API call you're ever going to see in your life. And now all I have to do is press save or run this module, and it's basically going to output all my different MPIs or different IDs in the data. Now, this is a big mess. Honestly, the easiest way to do this, guys, is just get all of this stuff here and then go over to ChatGPT, and within ChatGPT, say output the different employee IDs for the recipients, and just enter that data. And now I should go through it and find the relevant IDs. Fairly simple, just like that. And then it didn't give me the name, so I can put and now I should go ahead and actually give me the relevant names. So Jane Doe, John Smith, so on and so forth. And we have some doubles here because that's how we actually worked it out. But once again, fairly simple. Then you can just go ahead and, for example, duplicate this for Jane Doe, go over to the Google Sheet and the Employees tab, just go ahead and actually automatically add it here. But we've already done that, but I just wanted to show you how to do that. Now that we have our employees ID, we can actually begin working on the automation, which is the best bit. So the first thing we need to do is going to be similar to the other one, and I'm not going to delete this. I'm just going to keep it to the side just in case when you actually download the template through the community, if you actually want to do it, which once again, all you have to do is join the free community, go to the classroom, go to YouTube resources, open up any of these and just download the template straight away. So I'm just going to leave it there. But the first thing we want to do in the actual automation is search the rows. Now this is similar to the last one, but a key difference is we're going to filter it for only the actual sheets that are approved because we don't want to send money that's not approved. So within the actual automation, I'm going to go ahead and connect it, or in this case, I'm actually going to disconnect this and just put it as the trigger because this will be our trigger. And similar to last time, we want to connect it, and I'm going to change choose from all in terms of the drive. And then for the Pathfinder, I'm going to put payroll sheet, press OK, and it's going to search from a whole Google Drive, give me two different options, and in this case, it's payroll sheet 2. And then the sheet name in this example is the weekly logs, or sorry, it's the monthly sheet. That's the one we're actually scraping. And you're going to see all the different headers for us. And all the thing we want to do is, once again, we want to make sure the month is equal to, and in this case, you know what, I think it makes more sense to actually make it a bit more realistic, not make it this month or make it last month. So I'm going to go over to, then we'll keep this here. If I go over to date, I'm going to put format date, I'm going to put add months, I'm going to put here today's date. And all I'm doing here is basically subtracting a month from today's date, which in this case, I'm in March. So this should run for February. And then for the actual formatting, it's going to be year, 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 and then month, month. Once again, that's the same thing we have in Google Sheets. So we want to make sure it matches. So this right now, I'm actually going to update this because this is going to work for April, because once again, I'm recording this right now in March. So I want to make sure everything aligns. So these are the data we should be putting in, and these are the payments we should be making to the relevant people. Cool. So within it, I'm going to go over back to Slack and I'm going to leave it as this. And now if I go ahead and run this, we should get those payments from April. So let's see, we don't have it yet. 26 is not a valid date. Okay, we'll have a look and we'll see what's actually going on and as to why it's not working specifically. So format date, add months, now -1, why, month. I see why it's not working actually, because this right here, we don't want to add this here. We want to add this in the second column. That's my mistake right there. So if I go ahead and press save, and now if I go ahead and run this, this should work this time. Just like that, perfect. So as you can see now, we have February's data because we did month -1, and we have those 5 different bundles. But the key thing is, before we kind of move on to the next step, which is another HTTP request, we don't want to filter this for every single data. Remember, we have that human approval step. So here I'm going to add a filter that the approved has to be equal to true, and I'm going to make it so that, just to double check as a more so of a safety precaution, I'm going to be sent is equal to false. So here we're going to be only triggering this for different transactions which are approved first and not sent. So for example, here I'm going to approve, let's say, all of these guys, but I'm not going to approve the last one. So rather than 5, we should only have 4 different outputs here. And once again, we can go ahead and actually test this. It's not going to work now actually, but yeah, it's not going to work. Let's set this up first, and then I'll be able to show you how to actually test it. So the way it actually works within Wise is a bit annoying. Let me stay, oh, that was a quick one. Let me stay logged in. But in order to actually create a actual payment, we have to first create a quote, then we have to create a transfer, and then we have to fund that transfer. So it's basically a 3-step process. And as you can expect, we're going to have 3 different calls. So the first call is going to be to actually create a quote. And once again here, I'm just going to be inputting that specific URL, which is basically just the API call. Now, the key thing you have to change it is this number right here, which is basically your specific account ID. You can get this directly in your Wise account, or you can just use another API call to scrape this. In this case, this is my one, which is 28686718. It should be a number. Don't get confused by this puppy right here, because this is not what we want. We want the actual, and to be honest, to get this, you can go back to the previous chat that you actually had with ChatGPT and just ask it for your profile ID. And it's going to go ahead and actually output it for you, which in this case, once again, is 286178. I've got 2 different accounts, but you want to make sure it's the business account, so play around with it and make sure it works properly. So yeah, that's kind of the URL. Once again, the only thing you have to change it is to make sure this is the relevant ID. Now we can go actually and actually configure it. So the first things first, it's not going to be a get, it's going to be a post. And we need to add the headers. Once again, it's going to be similar to last time. We need to add the authorization header and the actual authentication, which is going to be our API key. I already showed you guys how to do that within your Wise account. And then the other thing we need to add here is a content type. This is just one of the annoying things about doing these different API calls. It's just content type. And then in most cases, it will just be application, and make sure it's lowercase actually. They're very big on formatting here, believe it or not. JSON. Cool. So now we will basically want to add our data, which is basically going to be our requests. These are the different quotes we're going to be creating. So for body type, I'm going to go to raw, and for content type, I'm going to choose just JSON. And this is where I'm going to be adding my request content. Now this is straight from Wise's API documentation. If this is updated since I'm recording this video, which is March 2025, feel free to go to the API and kind of update this. But for now, this is how they want it. I'm going to assume we're using USDs for both the target currency and the source currency. I've just labeled the actual information here. And the key thing here is that I actually automatically set the payroll date. Now, I'm actually going to change this because once again, this is going to output it as a March, which we're doing this a month before. So I'm just going to quickly change this to, rather than now, I'm going to go with the date similar to what I did before. I'm going to add months. I'm going to put now here and then -1. So rather than March, it'll be February, because this automation, when we set up the trigger later on, it's going to run 1 month before today's month. And that's pretty much it. That's all you basically have to do here. Let's go ahead and, can we hide this? I don't know why it's just stuck there. All right, it doesn't want to leave us alone. I want to show you this, guys. So I'm going to save this and close. All right, there you go. So this is basically our balance. And there's 2 things we need to add here. The source amount, which is basically the amount that we actually want to send it to. We can get that from the monthly total pay, and the actual target account. And this is where we're going to add the ID for the individual employee. It's very important that before you do this, you go to recipients and you add all of your employees already as recipients, because the way to do it without it is very complicated. I was bashing my head trying to do it automatically for each user. So trust me, it's the best way to do it. So once again, in the first API call, we're creating a quote. We've added our profile ID right here, which we got from ChatGPT. We've added our authorization, our bearers, our tokens, all of that good stuff. And we've also added our different payment that we're going to be sending each employee, along with a relevant ID for each employee and the actual date of the actual payroll, or when we're actually doing this. So far so good. Let's go ahead and actually test this bad boy, and we should see some quotes being created. So if I go ahead and actually run this, you'll notice there'll only be 4 quotes, not 5, because obviously we had that filter, doesn't allow it to go through. So even if we have 5 different bundles or events for the actual month, because not all of them are approved, in this case only one of them is not approved, there's only 4 that can actually be passed through. And that's what we've done here. We basically created 4 individual quotes, and we're going to be using all of this in a second. So far so good. I hope I haven't confused any of you guys. We've created a quote. Now all we want to do is pass the JSON so we can actually use it later on in the automation, because we will need the quote ID to actually use this. I'm going to put data and I'll put save. So let me actually run this again. I should have done that before, to be honest, but I'm just going to go here and just run the whole thing again. Now, we might have some duplicates, which I won't like, but you can live with it. So we've got some duplicates, and now you can see if you open this up, you can have all the information. The key thing we want here is that ID, believe the quote ID, because that's what we're going to be using when we're actually using the transfer. So I'm going to use another HTTP call, and this time we're going to make a request again. The key thing here actually, and to be honest, it will just be easier if I do this, just clone it, because all my authorization will already be there. But obviously this has to be different, because in this case we're not calling the actual quote API, we're calling the transfer API, because what we're doing here is creating a transfer. So in this case, you don't need your profile ID. I don't exactly remember why. I think this is because it's V1 and the other one was V3. There you go. We still need authorization and a different content type. The only main thing that will change here is our body, because in this point, we're not creating a quote, we're creating a transfer. So I'm going to delete all of this stuff. I'm going to be adding this code here. All we basically have to change is the target account, which once again is just the ID of the actual recipient, the quote ID, which once again we got the previous step, and a customer transaction ID, which I'll explain in a second. This was very difficult to figure out. So first, let's add a target amount, or the target account, sorry. For this, once again, it's going to be the same as last time. To be honest, I think we can get this from the API right here, target account, but you could even get this from a Google Sheet, doesn't matter. But just to make sure everything's working good, I'll add it here. And then the actual ID, or the quote ID, which in this case will be this right here from the previous step. And last, we have the UUID. This is basically like a unique code to make sure that the transaction isn't duplicated over time. And in this case, I'm using a UUID right here, and a preference, I'm putting it as payroll. Very simple. Very, very simple, guys. So once again, I'm not going to make the same mistake as last time. I'm going to go to JSON now. I'm going to go to parse JSON, so it passes that specific data in. And now I'm just going to go ahead and press save. And what you're going to see it do now is going to create a quote, and then it's going to create a transfer for 4 different people. Cool. Just like that, if you open this up, we can see all the different information about the actual ID, the amount, all that good stuff. The last thing we actually need to do is actually fund the transfer, so actually pay it basically. And to do that, once again, I'm just going to duplicate this specific API call and drag it in, just because the authorization is already there. And the key thing I'm going to be changing here is a couple of things actually. So first things first, I'm going to change the actual URL, because once again, this is a different API call. Now we're actually basically funding the payment. And once again, you'll see here, this is V3. So I've included my profile ID, which I got from ChatGPT right here in the actual automation. And I actually need to change it is the ID. And this right here is going to be my transfer ID. Make sure you're very careful with that. It's not the quote ID, it's the actual transfer ID, which once again, we have right there. This is still going to be a post. Authorization is going to be the same. And the only thing we need to change here is the body. And this body is probably the simplest body that we've had this whole video. All we have to do is change it to balance. Very, very simple, guys. So as you should see, this should automatically, for each transfer that we create it should basically fund it. So once again, I'm going to add the parse JSON step, and we should actually be able to test this now. So just for context, this is my Wise account right now. If I go over to home, it's a testing account, so I can't actually make the payments. So at the moment, you can see we have these right here, which is what we tested before, and they're basically waiting for me to pay. But what we're going to do in this last step is basically automatically pay the ones that we're actually creating. So if I go ahead and run this, and I ignore the error for now, we're going to fix that later. It's going to go ahead and create those quotes, create the transfers, and it seems to we have an error. Let's find out what the actual reason is. Resource not found. Interesting. Let's kind of work our way back and see what we actually did wrong. So we have the profiles, we have the ID, we have the transfers, we have the bearer, and we have the type. I'm not exactly sure what's wrong with this, to be honest, because everything's looking good. We have the ID, the payment looks, I know why. This is payments, it's not payment. It's always the small things, guys. Look out for these, when you're doing these API calls, it's always the small things like that. So let's go ahead and test this again now, and this should work, hopefully. Hopefully I didn't just shoot myself in the leg right there. So let's see. It's going to create the quote. It's going to create the transfer. There you go. It's going to fund the transfer for each individual transfer. And now if you open back to my Waze account and we reload this, you just see we have all of this, and we can actually see the transactions are actually being made. I mean, the sending is being paused, but because this is the example account, but the transaction is actually, it's actually been made, which is very cool. I'm very happy with that. And we have that for all the different employees with the relevant amounts for the monthly date. So for example, Emily Davis, we can see is 3696. And if you go over to the sheet, Emily Davis, 3696. So I'm very happy with that, guys. The last thing I kind of want to do is update this sheet because we want to make sure that we're actually tracking which payments are going through. So for this, I'm going to go over to Google Sheet. I'm going to put update a row. And once again, I'm going to search by path or search all. I'm going to do that sheet finder thing. So we're going to put payroll sheet, choose my relevant sheet. And then for my relevant sheet, I'm just going to choose the monthly sheet. The row number we can get from all the way over here just by going to row number here. And then the main thing I want to update is the sent. So I'm going to send to true. I'm going to change now the approved to false. And then I'm going to end the date set as today. I'm just going to format it a bit. So I'm going to put format date, enter today. I'm going to put in just month, day, year. So, and then last thing I want to do is enter the transaction ID, which I can get from this right here, the balance transaction ID. Cool, guys. Perfect. So I'm going to press save and I'm just going to run this again and we should be good to go. This is our pay sheet now. And what it's basically going to do is going to mark them as unapproved, mark them as sent now, and then add the date sent. So let's go ahead and test this bad boy out. Guys, honestly, when it comes to API calls, I know this sounds and looks super complicated, but the reality is that it's not. I mean, you can really figure this out. And I have a lot of faith in you guys that you can do. I mean, all it basically is a you kind of do have to battle ChatGPT sometimes to get right, or watch videos like this to kind of help you out. But this is how you can automate your payments through Wise. So now if I open my Google Sheet, you can see these have been marked as sent. I've got my date sent and my transaction ID, which corresponds to the individual payments. So I know that these payments have been sent. Guys, very happy with this. I've basically just shown you how you can automate your payroll completely automatically. The last thing we want to do in this video is set the trigger for this actual automation, which I'm just going to rename this to payroll sending #2. Once again, it's similar to last time. The trigger I actually want to set for this is going to be at the end of the month. And I want to give it a day for the admin to actually fill in the data. So I'm going to put days of the month. I'm going to choose the second and the time will be this. And that's pretty much it. Now this is basically going to run on the second of each date, and the first automation is going to run on the first of each date, and it's going to automatically pay people that have been approved within a time tracking sheet, guys. That's pretty much it. You've now managed to automate your payroll. Very, very cool stuff. One thing I would add to this is integrating part 1 of this whole kind of series within the kind of payroll system. For context, guys, in part 1, we created a time tracking system. So whilst the weekly sheet is cool, that's still something that is not variable, right? However, if you're using time tracking specifically for freelancers, for example, then that's when it gets a bit more interesting and you can start developing those different systems to automatically pull in the data. And I'll show you what I mean in a second. So within NoLoco, and this is in the first video we actually created, we created a time tracking app. And fairly simple, what workers could do, they could enter in any specific task, my projects, or enter specific work items. If they want to press that, they can see a start and start button. If they press started, they can assign it to themselves. For example, I'll just add a random descriptions for now, and it'll basically start a time tracking session where they can, track how much time they're actually spending on this specific task. And then when they went and press stopped, the time tracking session would actually ultimately finish. The key thing here is that all the time tracking sessions will basically be tracked in this massive database, which for each employee assigned the total time that each time second was. So the only thing I would use differently if you watch part 1 of this video is rather than using this Google Sheet, or I guess rather than using a weekly logs, I will just dynamically update this weekly logs by using this database right here in the time tracking sheet, just to make it dynamic and not make it so that you have to kind of manually update this weekly logs, because that's long. Who wants to do it manual? But the most complicated part of this automation was actually automating the payments, which is exactly what I've shown you how to do today, using these 2 different automations, whilst even adding that human touch and that sort of approval process that you need, to be honest, when you're dealing with anything to do with payments, so you can actually manually approve payments before they actually go out, because you don't want to be in charge a wrongful amount just because of some stupid automation that you saw on YouTube. Guys, I hope this video has been valuable. If you have any questions about anything I talked about today, please comment below. We're a very small channel, so the odds of us actually replying to your question in depth and actually solving the problem is very, very high. So make the most of it while you still can. Once again, guys, like I said, if you want to directly get these specific automations so you can just paste them directly into your account, all you have to do is join our free community using the first link in the description. Navigate over to the classroom. In YouTube resources, you'll see a post just like this where you can download the file straight into your computer, head over to make, press this button right here to actually import it, and then choose the file. It's very, very simple, guys. I mean, it's nothing complicated. I also add in a Google Sheet, even though I think it'd be good to kind of build it by yourself. If you get stuck on anything, just use the templates provided for you in the first link in the description. If you want help with your agency operations and actually integrating custom systems like this for your agency, you can check out the second link to book a call with our team or apply for one of our agency audits. By the time you're watching this, those should be out, which is very, very exciting stuff. Apart from that, guys, that's it from me today. Thank you very much for watching. I really hope this video has been helpful. I haven't seen a single automation video like this on YouTube going over how you can automate payroll for your employees. So I truly believe, as the time of me recording this, this video is one of a kind. So make the most of it. Use this in your agency because no one else is. And obviously at the moment, if you have a couple of employees, this is not going to change much. But as you start growing and you get 10, 20 different employees and you have to manage the payroll every single month, especially if you might not be at the point yet where you can hire a whole HR department, use simple automations like this to make your life easier. You won't forget to pay your employees. You're always paying them the right amount and what they actually owed and avoid any problems. Guys, thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.